How to compost in cold weather. Compost is made by microorganisms that break down natural materials into a useful garden product. However, chilly weather can slow down the activity of these microorganisms. When this occurs, gardeners will have to wait longer for their compost bins to work their magic. However, there are still ways to compost in the winter, as described in Method 1. Composting in cold weather. Chop compost materials into uniform, 2-inch pieces. Try to chop up your materials into small, 2-inch 5.1 cm pieces so that it will decompose faster. Exercise caution when using shredded leaves. These items tend to form clumps that are harder to get rid of in the winter, because cold temperatures tend to slow down decomposition. Blend or freeze kitchen scraps before adding them to the compost pile. Decomposition of kitchen scraps can be sped up by throwing all these items into a blender with some water, then pouring them into the pile. If this method is unappealing, you can also bag the kitchen scraps and put them in the freezer before adding them to the compost pile. The process of freezing and thawing out the scraps will help them decompose faster as well. Make your compost pile as large as possible. Larger compost piles perform better than smaller ones during the winter months because, even if the outer layers are frozen through, there may still be some decomposition going on in the center. This is because bigger compost piles tend to be self-insulating, with the outer layers protecting the inner ones. Layer brown and green materials within the pile. In the winter, deliberately layering green and brown materials in the compost pile will help create heat pockets of faster decomposing green materials under the brown materials that decompose much more slowly. This keeps the pile warm. Avoid disturbing the compost pile during the winter months. Try to take a hands-off approach to compost during periods of cold weather. Every time gardeners disturb their pile, heat escapes and productivity is lessened. Keep the compost pile damp. If you find yourself irrigating your trees and shrubs during the winter, you should also water your compost pile until it is damp. The microorganisms that break down the items in the pile need moisture to be fully functional. Insulate the compost pile to help it retain moisture. During the winter, tarps can be used to help the compost piles retain moisture and trap heat. They are easy to remove when new materials need to be added to the bin. In colder areas, snow can serve to insulate the compost pile from freezing temperatures and can be left on until you choose to add more to the compost pile. Those living in places where it does not snow or only snows infrequently may want to use straw bales for insulation instead. Consider buying a pre-made composter unit. Gardeners in cold climates may benefit from purchasing one or two pre-made composter units. These fully enclosed devices may provide the composting materials with some additional protection from the elements. Wait for temperatures to warm up a little if you think composting has stopped. Despite your best efforts, your compost pile may quit functioning when the temperatures drop below freezing. However, you should not worry too much because the compost piles are sure to return to life with the onset of warmer weather.